I think in order to be successful, you have to do 5 things.
Great.
There's a sequence, okay?
Great.
First, you have to have your goals.
And you talk about audacious goals.
Well, I think have audacious goals.
Yes. Why?
Right?
I agree, but why?
Because you want to have the greatest life you can possibly have and the greatest impact you can have.
And your goals affect you, whatever they are. If they're small goals, you're affected in a small way. If they're really driven, you rise to the occasion.
Right. Goals. Next, problems. On your way to your goals, you're going to encounter your problems or your failures.
Yes.
Right?
But you don't tolerate them.
You got it. Don't tolerate them.
Yes.
Right? Number 3 is then diagnose them to get at their root causes.
Yeah.
And often those root causes are things that people are doing wrong. Maybe you're doing wrong. Maybe it's a weakness of you.
Yes.
Notice the patterns. Get at the root causes.
Yes.
Once you know the root causes to your problems, then you go to find out a design.
Yeah.
So you've diagnosed it to its root cause. Find out the design of what you're going to do about that. So let's say you have a weakness. You might not, maybe it's develop the strength, or maybe it is to work with somebody who's strong where you're weak.
So you don't always have to be able to overcome every weakness. Sometimes it's finding the right partner.
It's usually the most practical thing, right?
That makes sense.
Because everybody's brain works in different ways.
Yes.
In other words, to see something one way, you're probably going to be blind in another way.
Yeah.
So to know how to work with people who are strong where you're weak is very powerful. So number 3, design what you're going to do.
Yeah.
And number 4 and number 5 is to push through to results, right? So you say, I've got a design. Okay, now goddamn do that design, right?
The determination and flexibility to find the way.
And that's it. This is what I call this looping. Go for your goals, identify and not tolerate your problems, get to the root cause of them, then design a path to fix those things, and then go beyond it to push through. And you just life is just basically keep doing that over and over again. Yes. And if you do that, you'll make the advances. That is why failure's a teacher. You know, if you have success, you did it right. So there's nothing to learn probably, right? If you have failure, there's something to learn, right? Yes. Make the most of your failures. What I learned, I developed an instinctual reaction that's different from failure. The instinct is now to view failure as a puzzle that will give me gems. The puzzle.
Solve the puzzle.
Right. The puzzle is, what would I do differently in the future so not to have that result?
And that's where the principles come from.
That's what you write that down.
Yeah. So you can guide those decisions in the future and really make it happen. After every event I've done, Ray, in 40 years, my team will tell you there's no exaggeration, not after every event, after every break at every event, which is usually pretty late at night, I think you know, I do a debrief of everything that worked so I can capture it and why, the principle behind it, and then I do a debrief of what didn't work or could have been better and what should we do to change it and improve it. And I've done that for 40 years, to give you an idea. So there's a reason why events get better and better, because it's nothing but principles. And then my team reviews it before the next event. We review what worked so we can do it again even better, and then we see what didn't and figure out what the solution is. And it's just, the learning never stops, right?
Well, this is why something you and I want to pass along to your help, right?
Yes, for
the
sure.
value of mistakes.
Yes.
And they sting, so they stick.
Yes, you remember them.
Right.
Yes.
Like I think of my life, and I remember back, and I remember all my failures. I don't remember my successes. Yes. And so I would think it was a life of failure.
I'll remind you. You've had a lot of success.
But because of that,
yes,
it's all evolution.
Yes.
It's all evolution.
Yes.
And it's beautiful. But you can't worry about getting your knees skinned, you know?
And this is the message. Let's catch this opportunity. If you complain, the other people catch it. If you catch the opportunity to embrace it now, you will be the next Alibaba. People like me, I was born in a very poor family. I never got a great education. I failed all the examinations. For what reason, I don't know. But later, I realized I don't have money, I don't have technology, I don't have a lot of good backgrounds. We have a rich uncle or something, no. The only thing I competed with my people, the young people, is let's compete for 10 years later. This is what I believe 10 years later will happen. So everything I do for that goal, I know 10 years later, this thing is going to happen. So prepare for that. Because I know if I compete with him for next month, no chance. So this is how my message, it's a challenge, but it's an opportunity. And it's the opportunity for people like us. This world, the most difficult thing is to convincing a successful people. When you tell him this is a great opportunity, he said, no, forget it, right? I've been doing this for 30 years. But for people like us, we're looking for opportunities in order to survive. So we will do anything to be creative. So this is the message. 30 years, it's an opportunity for us. It's a challenge for those people who are 60 years old. If they're 60 years old, not discrimination, but it is tough for them.
You were 20 years old when you founded Citadel. I was, I think, 19 years old in 1965 when I switched to analyze credit and create convertible securities, preferreds, and everything as a way of how do you finance a company. There are other Ken Griffins out there. They might be anywhere in the world today. What is your message to those individuals as you look back over the last 30 plus years? What are the things you learned that you would tell them along that road?
So, I think it's important to recognize that each of us in our own way are unquestionably an inspiration and a resource for the generation to come. Like, if there was the Michael Milken fan club, back when I was in college, I was member number 1. And you may or may not know this, you put out a poster of all the financial instruments that Drexel was involved with or created. That hangs in my conference room. And I just admire the innovation that your team and you brought to the table at Drexel throughout your career there. It changed the entire fabric of the U.S. financial markets in a profoundly powerful way for entrepreneurs. It's amazing what you did. And yet, I can't emphasize enough how much your colleagues would invest time with me. Like, for example, the person who was one of your top convertible sales or traders was JT, and JT would spend time with me on the phone, walking through how a bond was priced, how to think about analyzing its value. So one of the great things about our country is the willingness of each generation to both be an inspiration and a resource to the next. That really is a unique part of the American story. You know, just this last week, I was with a young man from Colorado who grew up in a very rural area, middle-class family. He's waitlisted at one of the best universities in the United States. His mother was friends with one of my former coworkers, and I'm coaching him for his college interview. All right, that's an American story. And I really do hope that those of us, and I know you do this every day in what you do, those of us who've been so fortunate to be the beneficiaries of so much that our country has to offer, that we just continue to give back to the next generation that follows us.
So Ken, you have made one of the 2 or 3 largest contributions to higher ed, to supporting scholarships, to supporting universities, etc. What do you see as the reason for that decision you've made that could maybe we could share with others who have the capability? And how do you think it will change either those universities or the life of the people that go to those universities?
So the Office of Financial Aid at Harvard is the Griffin Office of Financial Aid, and I have several hundred students at Harvard who have scholarships that I've underwritten in the context of a almost $700 million capital campaign that we did in the area at Harvard for financial aid. So Harvard did a $6 billion capital campaign. We raised $700 million to help young adults from all over the world attend what I believe is one of the greatest universities in the world. And why? Because just a few weeks ago, I was back in Boston And I was with one of the students who was recently left Harvard. He's back in Africa where he grew up, working on privatizing hospitals, rolling them up, and providing better health care at a lower price to people across the continent. And he's in his 20s. So I hope that the work that I do at Harvard brings the future leaders of the world from around the world to this great university. And in that environment and in that ethos, we create young men and young women like this man who's gone off in his 20s to change healthcare across the continent. To me, that is the most rewarding way that I can use the capital that I've been fortunate enough to accumulate, is to help that next generation stand tall on its feet and change the world just as you and I hope to do in our careers.
Ken, I hope you have a long, healthy life and have a chance to mentor thousands of those, because what happens really in Africa will determine the future of this planet, with most of the world's population growing there. And we're going to have, when we go, keep an eye on your young student in Africa. So I want to thank you for being you and your contributions. It was a pleasure to visit with you today.
Thank you, Mike.
Them, and then they have to have the self-discipline to follow that, and it's a continuous iterative process, so that's what we keep doing, right? So you're going in that direction. I would say that all of the shapers are doing that. They're doing that well, right? So they don't mind the problems. They don't mind that. That's their adventures. Wonderful book is Einstein's Mistakes. Right? How and you hear his struggles, right? He wouldn't have been able to be cutting edge. He wouldn't have been able to be inventive if he didn't go through that. So when you're looking at the personality characteristics lend themselves to doing that 5-step process well. It's the mixture of the elements that matter, right? And if you have a tremendous tenacity, but you're studying, you're learning, you're trying to memorize and remember everything that you're being taught, and you're really trying hard, you could have great tenacity. You need the making sense of something. You need to embrace reality. You need these other dimensions, right? So I think the things that we started to talk about just before, the things that these people have a need for is first they need to most fundamentally make sense of things, which is a very different kind of learning process. It's a very internalized learning process. It's not a memory-based process. So none of these people, unlike the population as a whole, none of these people have a desire to follow instructions. For most people, you go to school, they tell you what class to go to, what classes to take. This goes all the way through university. They do this, do this, and then you go into the class and they say, learn this, and this is the information, and it's largely a memory-based, instructional-based process. This is not what these people do, right? This is not, so the path, what they have is a strong desire to understand and make sense of reality. How does reality work, okay? And then, so they're all very independent, thinking, and rebellious. Okay, they don't mind, saying, screw you, this is what makes sense, and I've got to go down that path, right? They're comfortable with ambiguity. They love ambiguity. Some people don't like ambiguity. Most people, they say, I'm nervous about ambiguity. They love to go within the space of what's ambiguous, because that's where the discovery is, right? They love making mistakes, the process. They understand that making mistakes, loosen up. It's like, going to ski or something. You can't learn how to ski unless you're falling. So they don't mind the falling. They're not embarrassed about making mistakes. They're not worried also about the approval of others, right? So many people are constantly saying, risk, the whole different definition of risk. What's risky? They're not worried about what people think of them, right? Is that risk? Or failure? The term of failure is a totally different thing. The failure is a part of the learning process, right? What's the risk of failure? What, you'll be embarrassed? Or risk of failure? how do you distinguish failure from learning in your whole life? You know, failure implies that it stopped, that the game stops, right? If it's part of you're failing and then you learn, then that learning is part of the moving forward, right? So that is what the process is like. Fail, learn, move forward, and constantly do that because you're cutting edge. You're going where people haven't been before in inventiveness. That's exciting to those people. So that's a different kind of approach to life, right? It's a different way of being. People are so attached to being right, and yet the tragedy is it can be so easily to find out how you're wrong. If you just said to yourself, I'm not sure that I'm right, and let me go find people who have alternative point of views, and let me have quality conversations, not to pay attention even to their conclusions, but to their thought process. So, thoughtful discussion, worrying about being wrong, but not to the sense of being paralyzed or moving forward, but in the sense of trying to create discovery, to have an exchange, to go after the person who has the most different point of view, who is the most thoughtful, and then have a conversation to see their point of view, whether a person could be both open-minded and assertive at the same time. That creates a discovery process. It creates a fabulous learning. And that process itself reduces the probability of being wrong and produces a great deal of learning. People are so hung up on being right, starting their discussion and deriving some sort of satisfaction if at the end of the discussion they were where they began the discussion. So that doesn't make any sense because there's not going to be any learning. So ego plays an important role in that, right? That's that, the people who feel like I'm good, I've got it, won't learn. If you've got it, you won't learn, right? So you have to get rid of this ego barrier, I've got it thing. Then the issue of weaknesses, like every human being has weaknesses.
I would use a different choice of words. It's not capitalism that we value as Americans, it's economic freedom. You know, I grew up in a country where I could start a business in my college dorm room. And today, that business, a bit transformed, employs 2,500 people. I've been very fortunate to have been able to surround myself with individuals from all walks of life as my partners. My COO is in the front row. He is the son of a Chicago police officer. One of my colleagues grew up in mainland China. He's an immigrant to America. He's had a dramatic impact on the U.S. financial markets. So I've seen the American dream work out, and I've seen the consequences of economic freedom play out for all of my colleagues at Citadel, who've been very fortunate in life to be part of a team that really knows how to work well together. So I think that we need to understand when we're talking about capitalism, we're talking about a finite concept. What we really should focus on as Americans is economic freedom. The freedom to pick a career, the freedom to pursue a dream, the freedom to buy the products you want to buy, and the freedom to have the career you want to have in the location you want to live.